This is Michael Woodward, and this is Season 3, Episode 213 of the Jumble Think Podcast.
T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Welcome to the Jumble Think Podcast, where we interview amazing entrepreneurs about their journey of turning dreams and ideas into reality. Along the way, they'll share some tips on how you can turn your own dreams and ideas into reality too. Our guest on today's episode is Erwin McManus. More about Irwin in a moment. Whether you're new to the Jumble Think Podcast or you've been listening to it for a long time, today is a great day to head on over to your favorite place to listen to podcasts and subscribe to the Jumble Think Podcast. While you're there, leave us a rating and review and let others know what you think about today's episode too. Now let's jump into today's episode. Hey there, welcome to the Jumble Think Podcast. My name is Michael Woodward. I am your host. I am incredibly excited about today's episode. Before we do that, we want to take a moment and thank our sponsor for today's episode, OpportunityInChina.com and Mighty Travels. I'll tell you a little bit more about how they can help you later on in today's episode. I am so excited about today's episode. It is an honor to have today's guest, Erwin McManus, on the podcast. Now, why is this such a big deal to me? Well, back in 2016, a full year before we started having guests on the podcast and launching the podcast in 2017, I created a list of 10 people who were my dream guests to have on the podcast. On that list was Erwin McManus. Now, you have to go back a little bit further to understand why he's such an impact on my life and why you need to learn a little bit more about what he's doing. Back in 2002, I started working at a church called the Father's House in Oroville, California. I was a youth pastor and worship pastor, helped with putting on events and all kinds of crazy things. And I remember someone, I think it was my mom, sending me Irwin's book called The Barbarian Way. I read the book from cover to cover over the course of a couple of days, and it just impacted me about what authentic faith and a journey of faith with Christ means for our lives. When we decided to church plant in Northern California, up in Chico, we decided to be under the Mosaic Alliance, and Mosaic is the church that Irwin is the lead pastor for. So continue to read his books, watch his messages from LA, listened to his podcasts, and actually got to meet him a few times at Mosaic Alliance meetups. He continues to inspire me to go deeper in the journey of finding God's created purpose for me, but beyond that, to encourage me to be a person who impacts this world with the faith that defines me. So for me, this is a massive deal. Now, you may be wondering, who in the world is Erwin McManus? Well, Irwin is an iconoclast, artist, and cultural thought leader known for his integration of creativity and spirituality. He is the founder and lead pastor of Mosaic, a Los Angeles-based church of faith recognized as one of America's most influential and innovative churches. He's written tons and tons of books, owned fashion companies, created documentaries. As recently as today, because the book goes live today, he released a new book called The Way of the Warrior. The Way of the Warrior, An Ancient Path to Inner Peace, is an exploration of what it means to experience and establish peace in your life. Cultural pioneer and thought leader Erwin McManus guides readers to a deeper understanding of their inner workings and provides the guidance you need to establish peace and tranquility in your home, neighborhood, communities, and even the world around you. Through understanding and cultivating peace, you can become a warrior you were created to be. It's a killer book. I read it before we actually interviewed Irwin. It is different than his other books, and we talk about that in today's episode. We also talk about what it means to live a life of faith, what it means to impact our communities. So let's go ahead and join the conversation we had with Erwin McManus. Hey, Erwin, thanks for being on the podcast. How you doing today?
I'm doing great. I am so honored to be on this with you guys.
Right off the bat, I just want to start. So much of what you do is about finding purpose, finding what you were created to do, and stepping into that. For you, what was that journey like to find that for yourself?
Well, I don't think of it as a very linear passage because every 10 years of my life, I've entered into a new domain, a new career, a new venture. Usually it begins around almost 2 years before. So when I was 18 and 19, I was making transitions. When I was 21, came to a new future. When I was 28, 29, I began trying some new things. By the age of 31, I had a different career. Same thing happened at 38, 39. By 41, I had a new career. And even at 49 and 50, by the age of 50, I was a fashion designer and filmmaker. In my 40s, I became a writer and a futurist. And so in my 20s, that's when I was actually first doing ministry, doing churches, starting churches, and working with companies, organizations. So every 10 years, I've kind of tried something new. And I think a huge part of that is to realize that your inner world is informing your future, that you need to pay attention to your dreams, to your passions, to almost like to the places your imagination goes when you're not telling it where to go. And, so I would dream for years of being a futurist, of working with companies and helping them identify future trends and movements around the world and how to posture themselves for success, and how to help entrepreneurs and businessmen know how to leverage their gifts and talents for what the market was demanding. And I dreamed about it, but it took me a few years, and suddenly, next thing I knew, that was my career. I spent some years dreaming and scheming and, working with filmmaking and working as a director and an actor and a producer. And I just kept picking up skills and skills and skills. And then before I knew it, then I started a film company. And same thing happened in the fashion industry. I love fashion, began learning, and it always began as a hobby. And then I began learning the nuances, the details, the things that make something not just bad to good, but good to great. And
Wow.
And then I started a fashion company. What I would say to people is never assume that your hobby cannot become your life. That just because you're doing one thing right now and it's paying the bills, if that's not what's fulfilling, if that's not what is setting you on fire, if you don't get up in the morning excited about your job, then use your job to finance your future.
Wow.
Begin to dream and develop the skills around your dream so it actually becomes your life.
So good. And what's interesting about you were talking at 18, 19, and then seeing the fulfillment at 21, at 29, 30, and then seeing fulfillment at 31. It seems like a lot of the journey for you as a dreamer, as an idea maker, there is a specific process where it's you see the future, see the thing that you're created to step into, that next season, and then it's not immediate. And I think in our culture, in our society, often we feel like there should be an immediate response, there should be an immediate transition. So how do you process that transition in having one foot in the past, one foot in the future? There's a lot of tension in that. So how do you process that? How do you navigate that?
Well, right now I'm 60 years old, and I already I've had for at least 8 years plans for what I'm going to do in my 70s.
Wow.
The career that I intend to develop and to live in my 70s. And so I think some of it is one, rejecting the notion that you have limitations from achieving the dreams that are in your life. Just because other people don't think you can do it, just because it's hard, or just because you are not prepared today, doesn't mean that you cannot prepare yourself. And so a huge part of it is I look for things where I love the process.
Okay.
I always tell people, if you only love the outcome, that's not your dream. That's something you envy. And if you love the process of actually becoming good at something, the process of becoming great at something, then you've actually found a dream that can become your life. And so some of it for me is, okay, what are the areas I'm willing to do the hard, gritty, ugly, behind-the-scenes work to get really good at something long before anyone ever sees the outcome?
Wow.
The other thing I look at is who are people who are living the life and doing the things, accomplishing the things that I want to do. And I begin to study them. They become my mentors even though they don't know me.
Wow.
I never felt like anybody needed to choose me. I choose them to be my mentors. And so I pay attention. I go learn everything I can in that industry. And I have never stopped going to school.
Okay.
I've been learning all of my life, and so when I wanted to become a writer, I spent years, but I started developing my writing skills when I was around 10 years old. I began writing short stories. I began writing novels. I began writing fiction and developing that craft even then in my life. But it took me 30 years before it became a career. Now, I had publishers who talked to me when I was 29, asked me to start writing then, and I said no. I said, I'm going to wait 10 more years because I didn't want to just write books. I wanted to be a writer.
Okay.
And a lot of people have a goal of selling a book or becoming an author. I didn't have a goal of being an author. My goal was to write the timeless. I wanted to write literature. And I wanted my writing to be world class. And I think a lot of the problem is you want to do things fast. You actually just want to be successful. You don't want to be great.
Mm.
And a lot of times people want instantaneous success. But you can't create something that's timeless, truly beautiful, has the essence of greatness, and do it fast. If you want to be a great filmmaker, then keep working at it for 20 years. If you want to be a great communicator, then keep working at it for 20 years. And realize that the skills that you admire never come fast. It takes years and years and years of discipline and determination and honing that craft.
Yeah, we often say on the podcast, you have to go slow to go fast. If you want to go fast, slow it down, just wait and marinate in what you're doing. And you mentioned doing and enjoying that process. You know that it's the next step when you enjoy the process, not I have to arrive right away.
Yeah, and especially if you're doing something you love, you've already arrived.
Okay.
Yeah, you see, it's only when you're looking from the outside that you think success is when the person feels they've arrived. In fact, it's really funny. I think about 2 years ago, I was speaking at a conference, and it was a faith conference, and they did this interview with me afterwards. And in the interview, they said, "So how do you've just spoken at our conference? How do you deal with achieving this level of success?" And I looked at it and I said, I didn't know that speaking at this conference was achieving my measure of success.
Yeah.
I thought I was successful before I spoke at your conference.
Yeah.
And this conference deals with public perception. It does not deal with private reality.
Yeah. Yeah.
And this is a part of the problem, is that we keep thinking celebrity is actually success.
Yeah.
And it's not.
Yeah. I think you went into a lot of detail about that journey in Last Arrow, which I really loved seeing that, because you see, for people like me who look to you as a person who is a hero in our faith in the Christian journey, a modern day hero, it's easy to go and say, look at how successful he is because he's done all these things. But it's always interesting to see that internal dialogue that you're having and how you're defining success and the measure of success. You're setting the standard and not allowing the outside forces to define it for you. And you talk a little bit about that in your new book,
The Way of the Warrior.
Way of the Warrior. Yeah. Thank you. You're talking a little bit about that too, about there's an internal peace that has to be found in the journey of creating what you're supposed to create and finding the battles that you're supposed to fight. You're fighting for something, not against something. And then finding that peace is the ultimate place in which you find breakthrough. Talk to us a little bit about that and finding peace in the journey of the tension of often we strive for things or we're afraid to step into it. And yet that's where we're called to go.
Yeah, I think it's actually Jim Carrey who's quoted as saying something like, "I wish that everyone would become rich and famous so they would know it's not what they're looking for."
That's a brilliant idea.
Yeah, and I think a part of the reality is that you can't fix the problems inside of you by anything in the world outside of you.
Yeah.
That a huge part of what drives us oftentimes for success or fame or wealth or power or celebrity or identity is that there's stuff inside of us that's missing.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's a difference between a person who becomes externally successful when they are internally healthy.
Yeah. Because
that success is not the measure of their identity. It really just becomes a platform from which they can do more good in the world.
Yeah.
But when your external success is the source of validation, it's trying to replace the missing essence that your soul desperately needs, the sense of meaning and tension, the sense of value and significance that your soul is trying to grapple with. you just become a black hole, and it's never enough. It's never enough. It's never enough.
Wow.
And I see this all the time.
Yeah.
Guys who are just trying to, they're chasing success. They're chasing the money. They're chasing the fame. They're chasing the girl. They're chasing the stuff. And but they're running with all this emptiness inside of them. And a huge part of why I wrote The Way of the Warrior is because when you talk about things like, okay, how do you deal with the internal mess of your soul, like your anxiety, your stress, your panic attacks, your depression, your sense of despair, that paralyzing sense of insignificance that so many entrepreneurs are even trying to hide inside of them. And how do you deal with that stuff when you think you're supposed to just kind of like man up or toughen up? And that's why I think it's so important that even the book is called The Way of the Warrior. It's saying, hey, these issues are not a sign of weakness. They're actually a sign of strength when you own the fact that this is the most important battle in your life. That, and it's one of the, if I wrote a book, no man would ever read it, first of all, if it said, I don't know, healing your broken self.
Yeah.
Just no guy's going to carry it around, And I said, no, this is the way of the warrior.
Right.
The deep inner battles of your soul, it's a noble battle that needs to be won.
Yeah.
And by the way, like this, to me, this book is dealing with the most important battle in the world, because we're never going to have world peace until we have inner peace.
Right.
You're never going to have healthy relationships until you have a healthy soul.
Yeah.
You're never going to be able to be generous in the world until you learn how to be whole within yourself.
Right.
And because greed is really driven by an internal need to fill the vacuum in your soul with stuff. And if your soul is still empty, you'll never have enough stuff. But when you're whole, when you find that wholeness that comes from a deep inner peace, then no matter how much you have, you're always going to be generous. And that's a beautiful thing.
Yeah. Absolutely. I want to go into a little bit of the faith side of this journey. I just finished Way of the Warrior today, actually, reading it. Loved the book. The first half of it seemed to have a different tone than what I'm used to in your books. And so it kind of caught me off guard. And then it transitions into going so much deeper as you go through these different codes of the warrior. And I really love that. One of the things that I've been seeing in the church sphere and in the business sphere, especially around faith-based entrepreneurs or Christians, followers of Christ who are stepping into this journey, is that there is a tension of, and I've been seeing a lot of people lose ultimately faith in God and stepping away from it because they're saying, I stepped up to the plate feeling like I was walking towards the dreams that God had given, the direction that he had been taking me to, and it just failed. And for some people, it's, hey, I'm sick, I need healing. For other people, it's I'm stepping into this career I'm supposed to create. Or for people in ministry, I'm doing what I feel like God's leading me to do to step into that. And ultimately, things fall apart. There's a lot of failure along the way, and they lose faith. They lose faith in God. They lose faith in the dreams that God's placing in them. And they can't reconcile that. And it begins this journey of just running from God. And you talk about that in the Way of the Warrior, about running from God and that. So how as followers of Christ can we begin to reshape that and redeem that and restore faith to places where people feel like God's let them down, or that the expectations of the dreams that are inside of them don't fulfill what they thought they were going to encounter?
Yeah, I will say, when you talked about reading the book, that you're right. This book is different than any book I've ever written.
Yeah.
And it's textured, and the style of it is it's very poetic.
Yeah.
And it just keeps saying you different layers. And what I would say to a person of faith who feels really disillusioned is that, so oftentimes what happens is that we were just told something wasn't true.
Wow.
We were told that if you believe in Jesus, everything goes right. You never fail. Your dreams always become a reality, and it's almost as if God is this escape clause from the real problems of life. Mm. And I'm so sorry that somebody wasn't more clear.
Yeah.
To follow Jesus doesn't make life easier. It actually probably makes life harder. And Jesus doesn't give you a way out of failure. He gives you a way through failure. Mm. And and that's part of the challenge of it, is that you don't get to escape the challenges and problems of real life.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes we have a misunderstanding of how calling works. I hear so many people say, God told me to do this.
Yeah.
And I honestly, I don't use that kind of language. I think there's a subtle spiritual narcissism in Christianity where we mistake our opinions and our desires and our intentions with the calling and intention of God. And when someone says, God told me to start this company, I'm like, I think that God gives you permission and freedom to start a company. Well, God, you know how many people have given me books saying, God wrote this book. I just want to give it to you. I want to be so clear. God did not write my book.
Yeah.
All right, because if he wrote my book, it would have been way better. And I wrote the book, but my life is shaped by my relationship with Jesus.
Yeah.
I just think a lot of times we use very dishonest language. We need to say, like, I've done so many things in my life. I mean, I started a fashion company, a film company. I worked as a futurist. I started multiple congregations over the years. I've had several businesses. I ran a tech company. And I would never say that the success and failures of companies are based on God said this to me. I look at things and I go, how has God crafted me? How has he shaped me?
Yeah.
What opportunities has he put in front of me? And how can I do the most good in the world?
Yeah.
And that's what I go and do. And so when I write, I don't say, oh, God, wrote this book. I go, God gave me the gifts and talents to write books.
Yeah.
And I feel like writing books is a way that I make the world better. I wish I wrote better books. I wish that, I wish God would write my books. That would be so much easier. But he wrote one. It's called the Bible. So if you want to read his book, go ahead and read the Bible. And but everything else is one step down from that.
Yeah.
And that's what I would say to people when you go, hey, if you've been discouraged, it's because you misunderstood God. He never said you wouldn't fail. He never said you wouldn't have struggles. He never said everything's going to work out just fine. He did say you can live a life where you will never be limited by your failures.
Yeah.
You'll never be stopped by your failures. You can always get back up. You'll have the resilience to start all over again, to dream again, to believe again, and to risk again. To be an entrepreneur, you kind of have to be comfortable with failure.
Yeah.
You have to know that 100 failures is the material to one great success.
Yes, for sure. I definitely know that story personally with running my own and building my own businesses. That story is one that goes on and on. As we pivot in this episode, I want to make sure people know how they can find and connect with you. So what are the best ways for people to find Way of the Warrior, The Last Arrow, which was your previous book? You have Unstoppable Force, Wide Awake. There's tons of books you've written. You have great messages. How can they connect with you?
Well, I think the easiest way is to go to IrwinMcManus.com.
Okay.
And The Way of the Warrior is available there, and it allows you to get links. We've been creating written content, video content, a lot of supplemental material, a lot of the more fun, controversial things that I write that didn't make it into the book, I'll be releasing on that site, and in my own subversive, countercultural way. And so if a person wants to go deep into my books and to material, and also I have two podcasts that go out. One is just my personal podcast, Erwin McManus, that are my messages that go out across the world. And then me and my son, Erwin McManus, have a podcast called Battle Ready, where we just talk about life. We talk about haters on social media. We talk about how to have confidence, how to build your own identity, how to lead, how to deal with personal relations. We just take all the stuff of life and just talk about it. And it's a really fun podcast. And you can find all that on IrwinMcManus.com. One of the unique things with this new book, The Way of the Warrior, that has never happened before for me is that the audio book is out at the same time as what do you call it?
The paper book.
The written book.
Yeah.
The paper book, yeah. And they just sent me right now that The Way of the Warrior is actually number one in the spiritual category on Amazon, and it doesn't even come out for another week and a half.
Wow.
And so that's exciting. I just want to encourage people to dive in, because I actually think it's the most significant book I've ever written in terms of helping a person build the real struggles of real life. I'm really excited about the impact it's going to have.
Super cool. And this episode actually goes live on the launch day for the book. So if you're listening, get it on Amazon Prime or wherever you get your books, and you can have it like next day, or if you find an actual bookstore that exists, maybe even the same day. So go check that out now.
We'll be right back for Rapid Fire Questions with Erwin McManus. Today's episode is being sponsored by our friends over at Mighty Travels and OpportunityInChina.com. Here is a little bit more from our friends over at OpportunityInChina.com. Have you been looking for a way to change your career or social prospects? Do you see the world around you changing and haven't quite figured out what path you should take? You are not alone in seeking opportunity. Visit OpportunityInChina.com for access to scholarships to attend university in China. Or if you have a bachelor's degree already, OpportunityInChina.com provides access to jobs in the educational sector all across China. Now, working in China is not only often well paid, but it will place you among 1/5 of the world's population, boosting your social network, bringing you more deeply into the story of globalization, and opening doors you never knew existed. So seize your opportunity now. Visit their website for more information at OpportunityInChina.com. By the way, they have a great podcast. Simply search for Opportunity in China Podcast wherever you listen to podcasts. We also want to thank our sponsors for today's episode, Mighty Travels. Here's a little bit more about what they are doing. Are you an adventurer that's ready for your next trip? Well, our friends over at Mighty Travels want to make it so much easier for you. Most of us spend so much time getting onto our devices and searching for the perfect airfare, only to find out later that we missed a better deal. Well, let's stop wasting that money and wasting your time and start scoring great price tickets, often saving around $190 per ticket, and flying the flights we want to fly to the destinations where we want to go. Mighty Travels will help you by getting deals directly to your inbox and to your phone so that you never miss a great deal on the perfect flight. Swing on over to mightytravels.com/jumblethink. That's mightytravels.com/jumblethink to learn more about how you can start saving on booking the perfect fares for your next trip. Now let's jump into rapid fire questions with Erwin McManus.
We are back with Irwin to do rapid fire questions. Irwin, are you ready for rapid fire questions?
All right, let's go.
All right. So I'm actually going to throw in 2 questions from our audience to start it off. What does it feel like, and what are you seeing changing in the spiritual climate of LA and the bigger picture and vision of what you want to do to impact the world with the message of Christ?
Well, I have to tell you, I've been in LA for 26 years, and I've never seen a more vibrant, open environment in almost 30 years.
Wow.
Last year, our community faith mosaic right on the corner of Hollywood Boulevard.
Right.
We baptized over 1,000 adults last year and had over 5,000 people respond, giving their life to Jesus. And I have never seen kind of response in my life. It's been incredible. And we baptize people outside on the corner of Hollywood Boulevard and La Brea, right there, Stars Walk of Fame. And so I think it's the most open spiritual environment I've ever seen in my life. And I think it's going to get more and more open. We're in the middle of an opportunity here. We've never owned property in LA. It's really hard to buy property in Los Angeles. And the owners of the property we rent have given us like a 6-month window where we might buy that property. And so I'm scrambling now, just going, okay, God, this is a big opportunity. If we don't buy the property, they'll tear down the building and put condominiums there. And we're pretty much the singular church of our kind in Hollywood. And it's so you guys pray for us. We got to raise like $25 million in about 6 months to buy this property. It's a really exciting opportunity. Average age of our church is like 26 years old, so it's packed with young artists and writers and actors and directors and designers, and it's incredible that people who are in the creative industries who make their money on imagination, artistry, creativity, which means they're really poor, are flocking to the message of Jesus. So that for us is really exciting. It's the best time in our life.
So awesome. Jeannie Niles, our good friend Jeannie, asked, what do you do when you've used your last arrow? This is a reference to your book, The Last Arrow, which she just read. And she's just at that place where it feels like she's gone through that. So what do you do in those situations?
I would say if you haven't used the last arrow until you've taken your last breath.
Yeah.
And you always have one more arrow. You always have one more. It just means that you just need to take a deep breath, get yourself refreshed and restored, and some renewed vision, and jump in. Because sometimes in life, it's like the last arrow just means that it's a season in your life that's just come to an end.
Okay.
And God is ready to give you a new season. You just have to begin to prepare.
Super cool. All right. So really rapid fire questions. Here we go. Number one, as a child, what did you want to do when you grew up?
I wanted to write books.
Awesome. What is one tip you'd give someone with a big idea and dream and they don't know where to start?
Tell them to go serve someone who's living out a very similar dream, to learn from them.
What is one big lie about entrepreneurship you want to break?
One big lie I want to break?
Yeah.
That it's easy, but I don't know. What is a big lie? What are the big lies out there?
I think that's easy, and it starts from a garage.
Yeah. I think one big lie is that you should do it to make a lot of money.
Love that.
You should actually do it to give your life more meaning.
Oh, that's powerful. That's good. Love that. What do you want your legacy to be?
I guess I want my legacy to be that I changed the way the world thought about Jesus.
What is one book you think every dreamer and entrepreneur should read?
Well, that's not fair. I'm a writer, so I would say you should read The Way of the Warrior.
I agree with that. It's a great book. What is one trend you're currently excited about?
One trend I'm really currently excited about is how this younger generation loves to worship. They actually love worship music almost more than they love performance music.
Yeah. I love it. As a pastor that was a worship pastor, I am stoked about that for sure. So that is dear to my heart. If you weren't doing what you're doing today, what do you think you'd be doing?
I think I would be writing, directing, and acting in films.
And our final rapid fire question is, what is one dream you're still wanting to fulfill in your own life?
Dream that's achievable, or just any dream in general?
Any dream you have that you want to share.
Oh, I would love to win an Academy Award for being Best Director.
That's super cool. As we wrap up today's episode, what's the final thought you want to leave all of us with today?
That life was intended to be enjoyed. That God created you for pleasure. That you're supposed to be alive. You're not just supposed to exist. That every day is supposed to be an adventure with meaning and intention and purpose, and that what makes life most beautiful are actually people.
Wow.
That the relationships in your life will become the defining measure of your success. Not your money, not your talent, not your celebrity, not your fame, not your possessions, but the people in your life, the depth and intimacy of those relationships. That's what you're going to look back on and say, wow, am I rich?
Wow. Irwin, thank you so much for taking time out. I want to thank you, beyond being a guest on this podcast, for being a man of integrity, a man of purpose and significance that's chosen to live an unexpected life, and that you're walking in showing that light to so many others and impacting them. You truly inspire me, and I know you inspire so many others on this journey of faith and entrepreneurship and dreaming and ideas.
Hey, thank you so much. It's been an honor being with you.
In a moment, we'll be back with some exciting news and final thoughts. But first, we want to take a moment and thank the sponsors for today's episode, OpportunityInChina.com and Mighty Travels. Here's a little bit more about our friends over at Mighty Travels. I don't know about you, but I love to travel. I just don't like looking through all the websites to find the right fares to the right locations that I want to travel to. Well, our friends over at MightyTravels.com are helping you get better rates to the places you want to travel, often saving up to $190 per ticket. you should check out mightytravels.com/jumblethink to learn more about how you can use their service to get the right trips booked for you at incredible rates. So swing on over, check it out, mightytravels.com/jumblethink. We also want to thank our friends over at opportunityinchina.com for sponsoring today's episode. Here's more about them.
At the dawn of the 19th century, forward-thinking people moved to the commercial centers of Europe. Moving into the 20th century, America welcomed millions into the land of freedom and opportunity. It is now the 21st century. Many of the successes and fortunes of our generations will be made in China. To learn how you can seize opportunity in China, follow the Opportunity in China podcast. The Opportunity in China podcast is available anywhere podcasts are streamed, or you can visit our website at opportunityinchina.com.
And now for some exciting news and final thoughts on today's episode. We are coming off a big week at New Media Summit. Our good friend Steve Alsher puts on that event. He's also a past guest and met a lot of great entrepreneurs, heard their stories. Some of those will be coming on the podcast to tell about what they're doing, how they're changing the world with their ideas and dreams. So we're excited to be bringing that to you. But one of the things I'm really excited to let you know about is that starting later this week, you're going to start to be able to hear us on radio, both AM and FM radio throughout the country. We'll be announcing those stations later this week and how you can listen in and when you can listen in to us on your local markets. That's a big, exciting thing for us. We want to spread this story, the Jumblethink story, with more people, to be able to share the stories of our guests with more people, and also to spread the message that you matter, you're created for purpose and significance, and it's worth that journey to chase those dreams and ideas. So that is coming this week, actually. So super excited to tell you about that. We also want to give you an update on idea camps. We're going to be announcing in the next 2 weeks some changes to idea camps, some new speakers that are going to be involved, and exciting things going on with idea camps. Those events are all about helping you turn your dreams and ideas into reality. They're 3 days long. We'll take you from idea and concept to a strategy to make that idea a reality. If you want to learn more about idea camps, swing on over to jumblethink.com/idea camps, and you can learn more about that. On Friday, we're changing it up, and we are bringing our good friend Phoebe Mroczek on the podcast to talk about identity. It's a great conversation. You're not going to want to miss that episode. Then next week on Tuesday's episode, our guest is Rock Thomas. He's doing some really cool stuff. You may have seen his Goalcast video that went viral. He has a crazy story, and I want to make sure you check that out too. Here's my final thought for today's episode. It has been an honor to have Erwin McManus on the podcast. Truly a dream come true. Back in 2016, when we were planning to launch the Jumblethink podcast, I created a list of 10 guests I wanted on the podcast. And it didn't happen in year 1 or year 2, but in our 3rd year, we've had the privilege now of having him on the podcast. So I want to encourage you, sometimes when you chase your dreams and ideas, you want immediate things to happen. We even talked about that with Irwin in today's episode. But if it doesn't happen right away, if it's a longer journey to get to those dreams and ideas, to find and step into the things you're created to do, keep on the journey. Begin to take small steps to equip yourself and prepare yourself for a future, the future to make those dreams and ideas a reality. I want to encourage you, if you're in the mix of things and things seem impossible or out of reach, just continue on the journey, keep on going, keep pressing in, and one day you will see those dreams and ideas become a reality. Now it's your turn to chase your dreams and ideas and to change the world around you.
Les mères de famille, les enfants, peuvent également prendre un moment revitalisant. Dans quelques mois, lorsque vous aurez bien saisi la technique et que vous serez maître de votre corps, vous pourrez vous décontracter même en travaillant.